The government's next target, taking your IRAs, 401ks, and private pensions. I find this fascinating. Lowell Ponte, PhD, futurist with Swiss American Trading Company and co-author with Craig Smith of The Great Debasement. Their website, inflationdeception.com, if you want to check it out. And Lowell, welcome to the program.
Tom, great to be back with you.
Thank you for rejoining us. In your article, you write, first, it opens, is President Obama prepared to use executive authority to confiscate your private firearms in violation of the Second Amendment? To the best of my knowledge, the answer to that is no, he has never said any such thing. But let's leave that as an open question, because I realize that, Wayne LaPierre and some others are quite paranoid that he might do this. So then you go on to say, does anyone doubt that he's also ready to use executive authority to confiscate your life savings? And you say, progressives apparently see such confiscation, that would be of the 18 and change trillion that people have in their IRAs and 401ks. Progressives apparently see such confiscation of savings as a way to enrich government, stimulate the economy, and redistribute wealth. Progressives think it's unfair and unequal that self-reliant, responsible citizens defer their pleasure to create savings accounts with their hard-earned, hard-saved money. Am I quoting you correctly?
You are quoting me correctly.
What progressive are you quoting?
I'm not quoting a progressive. I'm talking about the knowledge I've had of dealing with progressives for 60 years.
Can you name one, please? I would like to talk to somebody who thinks like this, because this is insane. This seems to me like the worst kind of straw man, unless you yourself are hallucinating.
Why, we had Franklin Roosevelt confiscate people's gold in 1933.
We've
had Barack Obama
he reimbursed them for
massive new taxes.
Excuse me.
Them?
Yes.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
He gave them $20 for gold that only weeks later, when put on the free market, was worth more than $30. In other words, he grossly underpaid them for their gold.
Okay, arguably, but and I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think that was the smartest thing that he did. But
in 2010,
but I don't know of any progressives today who are saying let's take the 401ks of working people and do what is it you think progressives are going to do with those 401ks?
In 2010, the Obama Treasury Department and the Obama Labor Department were both discussing replacing people's 401ks with annuities. They were investigating this. It was reported in Investors Business Daily. It was discussed at length by among others, Newt Gingrich.
Well, before that, Ronald Reagan replaced IRAs with 401ks. If you're talking about doing it the way that Reagan did, it's like, okay, here's another option. I would love to have an option. I don't have a 401k because it's a scam. It's the average person who has a 401k in their 30s, who opens one in their 30s, by the time they hit 65 and retire, they've spent over $150,000 in fees to banksters. It's got nothing to do with government. 401ks are big money for the banks. That's why the banks lobbied for them during the Reagan administration, and that's why we got those instead of IRAs that were much more self-directed and much more self-contained. And there's all these rules associated with it. And the Reverend
Jesse Jackson, by the way, as a presidential candidate, also called for taking pension funds and requiring the pension funds to invest a large portion of their money in things like low-income housing for the poor. In other words, to divert that wealth to progressive spending costs.
Well, low-income housing for the poor, oddly enough, is a very good investment. There's a lot of people who get really rich being slumlords.
Well, there certainly have been in Detroit, where you could buy a house for $1,000, turn around, have the government rent the house to the poor, insure it for you, and they'd pay you $700-800 a month forever.
So Jesse Jackson is a smart investor. I don't understand why you're attacking him.
Because he is telling pension funds they have to invest their money.
No, he never said that.
In progressive. Yes, he did.
He's.
You could go back and look that up. That's not really disputable.
Suggesting that pension funds should be investing in socially responsible things rather than oil companies or rather than South Africa, that they should invest in
to invest in those things. It wasn't an option. It was a requirement that Jesse Jackson wanted.
Okay, so you've got one guy that you can pick on right now, Jesse Jackson. So we'll stipulate you have, but I still don't see that Jesse Jackson has said that it's unfair and unequal that self-reliant, responsible citizens defer their pleasure to create savings accounts with their hard-earned, hard-saved money.
We should not be telling people where they must invest.
But you already are. Ronald Reagan created these 401ks. That's why, like I said, I paid my taxes on my money. I put my savings wherever I want. Damn it, and I'm not going to have some guy at Goldman Sachs do it for me.
And was he requiring that investment be made in conservative groups and causes? No.
Well, Jesse Jackson wasn't requiring that either.
Well, that's generally what is meant by low-income housing. But by the way, this is not just an airy-fairy theoretical issue. Don't forget, in 2008, this is exactly what Argentina did. It simply swept away people's pension funds and replaced them with government bonds that were worth about 27 cents of their face value.
It's because their entire economy collapsed. It's because the banks robbed them blind. It's because they had been run by functionally a military dictatorship.
I have no doubt that this would only be done if some kind of pretext like that could be found or created. But then that's why so many in the Obama administration have made an emergency is a terrible thing to waste their slogan.
Rahm Emanuel's phrase. Don't you think that it's far more likely that if somebody is going to steal the 401ks of Americans, that it's going to be the people who actually have possession of the 401ks of Americans? It's going to be the banksters on Wall Street? In fact, don't you think that they're already stealing our 401ks?
Well, they are. They're doing it in slow motion, as I said.
Churn rates, fees.
And inflation. Inflation is a form of theft, after all. It devalues the money you're trying to save. And right now, the government is practicing what economists formally call financial repression. That is, they're holding the interest rate banks pay you below the rate of inflation, meaning every day you have your money in a bank account, you're actually losing purchasing power.
Yeah, the actual inflation rate for the last quarter annualized was 0.6%, which is pretty damn low.
The real inflation rate was closer to 7%. The government holds an artificial inflation rate and announces one because if they didn't, they would then have to pay cost of living increases, something, by the way, that Mr. Obama did not do in 2009, 2010, 2011. It wasn't
his choice. These were rules that were put into place by Ronald Reagan again. All of the rules on the cost of living adjustments on Social Security were put together by the Moynihan Greenspan Commission, put together by Ronald Reagan, signed into law by Ronald Reagan, saluted, all the Republicans saluted that flag. Let's have one generation pay for double pay, not just the retirement of their parents, but retirement of themselves. Yeah.
Well, and all of that is contingent on the numbers for inflation that government comes up with. So it came up with a number for inflation that didn't count gasoline, didn't count the cost of food at the supermarket, and voila, suddenly there's no inflation because they omit all kinds of things from their inflation index.
So are you suggesting, I just want to understand this, you're suggesting that the people that we really have to be afraid of are not the banks on Wall Street. They're not the transnational corporations that want to put out of business, the Walmarts that want to shut down all the local businesses in your neighborhood. It's somehow the people that we elect to public office?
What we have to be afraid of is bigness. I happen to be a libertarian. I like small business. I like decentralized power. I like power in the hands of the people.
So then you want the government to enforce the Sherman Antitrust Act?
I want there to be no giant crony corporations like General Electric.
So you want the big government to enforce the Sherman Antitrust Act like they did through the Carter administration. Carter broke up AT&T.
Well, because monopolies of that size only exist when government backs them. If government simply stopped backing them, you would see decentralization.
Not at all. Have you ever played the game of Monopoly?
I have.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with the government. It's, the big companies buying up other big companies, and eventually all you're left with is a giant fish. But anyway, we'll have to live to fight this one another day.